Thanks for being here. Really been looking forward to this conversation. Glad we finally got to meet. I'm deeply honored that you're here. And I just want to, we talked a little bit before this. I just want to say for those, asking or listening and watching that we might go all over the place. You have permission at any point to back off and we might go deep. We might go into trauma. We might go into all sorts of different unconventional areas of relationship. But I have it that all of that is okay. And the more we have conversations about it, the more other people realize that they can be free to be themselves as well. So thank you, Max. Thanks for
Well,
being
it sounds like a wild ride.
here. So say a little bit about you. Who are you, Max?
So I am somebody really passionate about understanding relationship and intimacy. I've been doing videos since 2012 out of a calling to shine light on different relationship dynamics and on intimacy and particularly on taboo topics, things that people have a hard time talking about. I'm a shadow worker. That means I always work on integrating myself. It doesn't mean that I'm all about the dark. No, I work on integrating myself, and that includes looking at the not so pretty parts and owning and claiming them. Where I found most of my power. So I'm a shadow worker. I also love to fly kites.
I love that. That's delightful. Could you, so I think people have different understandings of shadow. And this is one of my, and I'm hoping you could shed some light on this. One of my pet peeves, sorry, I can't quite get these headphones adjusted right. One of my pet peeves is the way people relate to shadow is something that's like, it doesn't necessarily mean dark in my experience. It means something that you have disowned or are unaware of, and so to me, even when people talk about shadow work, it's really the stuff they don't want to look at. Could you tell me a little bit, because you're a shadow worker, could you say a little bit about what you mean by shadow?
Well, in the sense that Jung gave to the word, which is that you our work is to make the dark, to bring the dark into light. If we don't do that, it controls our life, and we call it fate. So you might say, I want a happy relationship. Consciously, I want a happy relationship. But what continues to show up is disasters, terrible turmoil, pain, rejection, the worst. And you keep saying an affirmation. No, I thank you for bringing me the perfect relationship. And so that's an example of the dark side is not known. Where you want to go with that is you want to say, oh, maybe I actually like all this rejection. Maybe I get off on it. Maybe this is good stuff. Maybe or a woman who has a controlling boyfriend and she says, this is not healthy for me, but she keeps ending up in that kind of relationship. Well, maybe there's a part of her that loves being that important to a man, that loves being his heroine. So that's what I mean. It's just not being afraid to look at that. Maybe
at least consider it.
Yeah,
right?
At least consider it. Right. So, yeah. And does that answer?
Cool.
Yeah.
It does. Thank you. Yeah. One of the antidotes to shame, I believe, is self-acceptance. And so if you're willing to, and it also, self-acceptance doesn't mean being okay, being a jerk. It means being willing to look at yourself in the mirror unflinchingly, but also without judgment, positively or negatively. Just say, yes, I do that thing. So I think a lot of people go into shame around those parts of themselves, when if they were just willing to look at it and go, yeah, that is a part of me, it brings it into the light that much faster.
Yes.
But I also don't want to get into a self-esteem conversation. I don't want to get sidetracked. I want to talk about unconventional relating and really, this idea that you can have anything that you want. And so you have navigated and negotiating a very unconventional relationship with your partner. Yes.
I've had many partners throughout the years, and
Yeah.
say more about what you're aiming at here.
Well, currently, so we talked right before this about the fact that you were able to navigate seeing prostitutes and have that be okay and to negotiate that. And so we talked about talking about that specifically. That's edgy for people. Could you say a little bit more
Yeah.
about what brought
So
you to that
it never.
desire? And
Yes, absolutely. And I have just released a video that I did with someone in Thailand, Mani, from the Dark Side of the Feminine Summit, about breaking the taboo of seeing prostitutes,
yeah,
seeing sex workers. And in that conversation, I
yeah,
share a lot
sex workers.
about my own story. Yeah, the sex workers feels better, but there seems to be a
It
ban
does.
if you write it down. Facebook doesn't like the word sex, so
Neither
um,
does PayPal. So if it's on
so
your
for me,
website, yeah,
so Jason, for me, the this topic of seeing sex workers goes back until when I was 15 years old, and my mother actually, who I had a extremely dysfunctional relationship with, took me to the red light district in Amsterdam, where we lived when I was 15 years old. And
okay, wow,
you have to, just as context, my mother was extremely confusing to me. She was perverse, she was controlling, she was abusive. I was at times terrified for my life by my own
yeah,
mother.
yeah,
Um, Also as an adult in my 20s.
sure,
And she had a sort of an emotional claim on me, and she showed me to the red light district as a way, okay, Max, this is where you can find sex, and just
hmm.
have much sex as you want, just don't abandon me. And later on in life, I realized I ended up going to prostitutes, as that was, my mother had paved the road. I didn't do that as 15 years old, but later on, when I was in my 20s, it became a very regular practice for me to go there, and I loved it. I found delight in it. I even saw women I knew. I was a student in the University of Amsterdam, and the faculty secretary who worked in the office of the university, after 5 o'clock, she was behind the windows. And she had a much more fun than in the office. And she was standing there behind the window, and people walking by, and I didn't go inside. But there was something about that. It was, of course, not entirely healthy, and there was an addictive aspect. But
Sure,
I was okay with it. And in the beginning, I was not honest about it. I had to learn the hard way that my
yeah,
girlfriend got extremely upset when they found out by coincidence that I would go there, and I didn't want to hurt them. It was very painful in the beginning, but
yeah,
later on in life, I started to accepting this more about myself. That the prostitutes was a place where I could feel safe. My mother wouldn't be coming after me. The woman wouldn't be coming after me. It was a transactional situation, and both during times that I was solo and sometimes not very happy, I could go there. And also when I had partners, I would go there. And later on, I told my girlfriends, this is where I sometimes go. And as I
good.
grew older, it was more accepted, and it was just something that they actually also enjoyed hearing about sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, good. And so first of all, like, I have had several opportunities over the years to, so I think so for me, I don't know if those of you who are watching, or Max yourself, you've been watching some of the stuff I've been releasing. And one of the things I have is there's four foundational agreements for healthy relating. And the first is you tell the truth openly and graciously, and you hear the truth openly and graciously, and you value truth over comfort. That's the first agreement. So but that's, terrifying for a lot of people. And I imagine, so in my world, you can have really anything you want in a relationship if you're willing to ask for it. Now, some people may not want to participate in it, but the fact that I think a lot of times your own level of comfort with your own desires communicates to people, and they go, okay, well, if he's, okay with it. And I love the last part. Like, there are some women or men who love hearing about their partner having a great time with somebody else. There's also situations where, you might want a thing, and you're in a relationship, but your partner doesn't want to participate in that thing, that sexual act. And so having a sex worker, somebody who's very skilled in that area, in that particular fetish or whatever, could be very useful, very valuable. And so you get that release. And I think that if you give people that freedom, they're more likely to stay with you rather than, the fear that people have, which is that you're going to lose them.
Well, it's always very complex, as you know. There's a need for boundaries. If
Of
you just
course.
go along with whatever there could be a situation where you're with a woman and you really love this woman and you're committed to her, and you should actually not accept an open relationship because that's not an integrity for you. If you do it out of fear to lose her, see the motivation count, then it
Yeah.
may not go well with this open.
Anything motivated out of fear is not going to go well.
And there's also, speaking of truth, there's also a way that we can use truth as a weapon, and I'm not a fan of that. In other words, you
Yeah.
don't necessarily have to say something that is not really going to be impactful.
Well,
But yeah, we have to kind of know what is appropriate to share sometimes.
yeah. So a lot of times, speaking your truth is just cover for being an asshole. That's not what I mean. What I mean is, if you're scared to say a thing, that's probably the thing you should say. Or if you're scared to ask a thing, that's probably the thing you should say. Um, and it might be, truth over their comfort. Like, hey, so I just posted a thing on Facebook that was, what are the scary conversations to have? And the overarching theme was, I need more sex. It wasn't like, well, I've cheated on you, or but it was mostly like, I want more. But people are afraid to ask that because they're afraid how the person's going to perceive, how it's going to be received. So I think, of course we have to have care for the other person and the impact it will have on them. But a lot of times people don't tell the truth and get caught up in their heads around the thing that they want to ask about, and I can't tell you how many times I've said a thing and I've been waiting. I'm like, oh, all right, well, I've waited too long to say this. And I was like, I want this. And she goes, oh, really? I do too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's actually a point of relief. Now, speaking your truth or giving somebody feedback, that's a different thing. That's usually just an excuse to be a jerk. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about like something that's scary or that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is something that's scary for people to share. Not that they're lashing
Sure,
out with, or
sure.
that they're,
Makes
but
them.
I agree with you. The truth is often cover for people to just be mean, and that's not what we're talking about.
I think what matters is that you have a matching purpose in dating, in relationship, and
Yeah.
Alice Armstrong talks about that. And she says, don't wait until the fourth or the fifth date, even before the fourth date. Make sure this person knows that you want kids, that you want marriage,
Oh,
that,
yeah.
that you want just oral sex and nothing else. Whatever it is.
First date. I mean, really.
Yeah.
I mean, my first date questions are, what's important, or really these days before a first date. Well, what's important to you in relating? What has worked, what hasn't worked for you in the past, like, and if that thing, like they say communication, like they say, well, communication is important to me. Well, how would that show up for you? Because the form in which it shows up is also different for people. And so, if you're not aligned with values, it doesn't matter how much chemistry you have. It's just predictably going to not go well.
We're in a pandemic, Jason. What do you think? Talking a little bit about how that's affecting our relationships.
Well, it hasn't really affected mine, but I do want to give a shout out to so Philippe Lewis, who's a good friend of mine, and I right before I flew up to Seattle from San Francisco, I rented out the downstairs studio there, and I always leave spaces cleaner than I found them. But they asked me, because we're in the pandemic, they asked me what my contact was, they basically they were treating it as if I was going to be, I wasn't, but they were treating it as if I was going to be a new lover. So they were asking me who have you had contact with? What are your hygiene practices? Do you have any symptoms, right? So they were asking me these things about COVID-19, and I thought it was brilliant. And I actually haven't acknowledged him yet. And he said, well, we're treating people who stay downstairs like we're asking them similar questions as if they were going to be a new lover. And I was like, you know what? That's brilliant. Because there are certain protocols under which, you would allow someone into your home or you would, go out on a date. But I'm a massive introvert. So it hasn't affected me at all. But what I have noticed is, like my, my hairstylist, I bought her a face shield but there are certain protocols under which, like coming over to my house, please wash your hands, face, if you have that kind of thing. I think the other thing that's gone on is people, if they have started to work from home, I think it's revealed a lot about their interpersonal dynamics that they were allowed to ignore. And now they have to confront those dynamics. Those are the ways I've noticed. It also has revealed to me people who live in fear versus people who are like they're not in fear but they're being cautious, they're taking the right precautions, and then those people who are just insane around oh, you're not going to put a mask on me. Like there's this woman who said that somebody asking her to put a mask on to go into Whole Foods was the equivalent of rape. And I went, all right, well, there's some unresolved trauma there. So I have it that the pandemic is a Rorschach test also.
Is it what? Sorry?
A Rorschach test, like an ink blot test. Like, oh, here's COVID-19. What do you see? So it just reveals people in my experience. It's giving me all sorts of great information about humans. But
yeah, I have a friend who says I don't wear a mask. I said, well, how do you get into a store? She says, I tell them I have a medical condition, which is not true. So
yeah, I mean,
anyway,
let's not get into them.
But I want to say what I've noticed during the pandemic is there is a interesting process happening in my world where the people who are really meant to be there, things are getting better, the relationships are improving in quality, and there's also people falling away where
right.
it seems to be a time for really truth and true caring and true contact and mutual support. It's a test. You're going to know if your quarantine buddy is really someone you want to hang out with that much.
Right.
And if it's not,
it clarifies so much.
Yes.
Yeah. Excellent. Good. So say a little bit more about the process of negotiating with you have a partner currently, right?
I do. I have a partner, but interestingly enough, this is not a sexual partner. This is a partner who has been in my life for 10 years, and we have a very strong emotional connection.
Were you sexual partners before, or
we were sexual partners in the beginning? Yes.
And so your relationship has transitioned into
but it
else.
transitioned into a deeper, in a very stable attachment and bond that feels like marriage, actually. And I can have other relationships that is discussed and negotiated, and she can too. But it's very powerful to have a very solid relationship that's actually not based on erotic.
Can you share a little bit about like the transition, but also most importantly the conversation? Because I recently posted this thing about how to have scary conversations, and this is a terrifying conversation for a lot of people, to talk about seeking, because so many people have intimacy and sex collapsed. And not that I think people should have sex without intimacy. I don't personally. It doesn't work for me. In fact, it takes me sometimes 2 or 3 times before I'm even fully hard with a woman because I need that emotional connection with her. Um, and fuck it, this is my show. And I've been, I've had celibacy for, I was like, should I say this? I'm like, of course, it's mine. To say whatever the fuck I want. I haven't had sex since October. And that's not because of pandemic. That's because I've been waiting for the right timing, the right fit,
Right.
and also, in my 20s, and 30s, I did all the things. And so now I'm looking for depth and connection. I'm not looking for, simply, and because of what it takes for me to actually get fully engaged and to be, um, but my
There's nothing
question,
wrong. There's nothing wrong with celibacy. It's a time of growth,
yeah,
personal development.
well, I have it, especially after a breakup with, somebody you consider the love of your life. You better take some time. And I have it that sex confuses things. It doesn't heal you usually. I mean, sometimes it can in certain situations, but having sex too soon with somebody else, there's gonna be transference. You're gonna collapse things. You're gonna bring all that unhealed energy into it. It's not fair with their heart. I have it. If you really care about other people, you really, I don't, at least in my experience, I don't want to have sex with somebody until I'm ready to be having sex with people and dating people. Otherwise, it's just not clean. And so over the last 15 years, there have been periods I've had of celibacy of 26 months and 14 months and 18 months. And this most recent one is, I'm approaching it's like 9 months now. Now that I'm counting. But I just think it's healthy to take time after breakups to take inventory. What could I have learned? What could I have done differently? What additional qualities do I want in my next partner? All those things. I think it's important. I think it's responsible.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Can I ask you
so
something?
you can ask me anything.
Okay. Do, do you have um, thoughts or experiences to say about the topic of addiction in the realm of relationship? Or what's your perspective on that?
um, so yeah. So I've never had a relationship I considered addictive um, until the one I ended about 18 months ago. I'd also never dated a codependent before then. And I've also never had a volatile relationship before then. Like I've never had the fight and fuck thing. I had the fucking fuck thing. um, but I was talking to a friend this morning and I said, friends used to ask me, what did she do? Sprinkle crack on her pussy? And I was like, well, I don't know. But there was something about just the quality of our connection that was addictive for me. And I think now it's the first time I've experienced something like that. And I'll be very cautious about it again in the future. But I do think it's real. I think and for me, I was like, I can make this, like my addiction in a sense was, I'll do whatever it takes to make this work because I think this is the love of my life. And so I was addicted in a different way. And just the quality of our energetic connection while we made love was, you know, heretofore yet to be matched. I'm sure it will be and exceeded because that's what I do. Like, it's always an up level thing, which is one of the reasons I take some time. Uh, I can't speak for her, but what I do know is that I think a lot of people aren't in relationships; they're in habits and they're in addictions. Um, and it's one of like one of the first things I ever pose to people about relationship is like, are you in a relationship? Or are you in a habit? Um, and some of that's about just being in a dead relationship, and but some of it is about like the addictive aspect of some people who need that hit of being loved or being, especially people with lower self-esteem, they're more, I think, inclined to get, or codependence, they're more inclined to be in addictive type relationships. But it explains this is horrible. I'm leaving. Oh my gosh, what are you doing back with that person? Oh, this is like, it explains the back and forth. Like there's only, addiction's the only way to really explain
Well,
it.
you talk about
Thoughts?
addiction to drama
Uh,
and dysfunction, or
I don't view it that way. I view it more as so I have it as it's more the addiction to when it feels good. It's just that it doesn't feel good enough. I mean, some people might be addicted to drama. I just don't, that one doesn't compute to me. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm saying I don't have a answer because that's not my experience personally. Like I loathe it, which is why I've only had one experience. I mean, I left my wife after like 5 fights, you know,
you left
in
your
three
wife.
years.
You left.
Yeah, 20 years ago, I was married, and after like 5 fights, I was like, I'm not doing this conflict thing anymore. I was like,
Okay,
not doing it.
boundary.
Yeah, yeah. There was lots of other reasons, but you know, I was like, this conflict thing. I'm not doing this conflict without rapid movement through it. Like I'm not saying there won't be conflict, but there should be clean, mature movement through it. And in that situation, you know, 3 days of the silent treatment, and I left. I was like, I'm done with this. I don't do conflict. I just have it. It's most of it's unnecessary. It's all drama is unnecessary.
Well, we work on ourselves, and I believe that the people that are our partners, that there's really no coincidence. They are there for a very good reason. You are
Yeah,
drawn to this person for because it's going to work something out for you in your subconscious or in your heart. If you
absolutely.
really drawn to that, and there's also the spiritual principle that I believe in, that people are mirrors. If you, for example, somebody who keeps saying everybody's unavailable, men are unavailable, women are unavailable. Well, look at yourself. Maybe you are unavailable and you're attracting that.
Yeah, yeah. Somebody recently posted a question like, you know, do you think it's hard to find good women? I'm like, no, they're everywhere. Like there's amazing humans everywhere. It's like a student of mine recently. He said, I thought all creative people were gone. I was like, have you been out lately? Like when, there's so many creative people in the world. There's so many beautiful, brilliant, developed, available humans in the world, men, women, transgender people. Like there's extraordinary. Like all you got, like you could easily find extraordinary people who are available. So I think you're right. I think it's just a weird thing. And when you're available, those available people show up. But it's also a little bit of self hypnosis. Like it's I don't want to boil it down to a law of attraction, but it is. It's like the reticular activating system. You have a thought, your brain goes out, finds that thing, confirmation bias comes in to prove that you're right, all those things, right? Um, so
You have this show is, you said, mostly about inspiring people about their relationships. Is your work as a coach also mostly focused
well,
on the?
evolve. It is now, reluctantly. I was coaching coaches for 10 years, and engaged in personal evolution, which is, and usually my clients were single. But where I made and I always said I didn't want to coach relationships because, maybe the addiction aspect. I would say, well, here's what you need to do, or I would ask them questions that were too challenging for them, even though they were asked it was like, sort of like, well, what's important to you in a relationship? Are you getting that? That's like that. And then they would disappear. Um, or I would give them, they'd say, well, I want, this is happening. And I said, well, here's how you communicate how to get that. And they'd go, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And because I'm, a romantic and I've been really assessing what works and what doesn't work for 30 years. And like, if you really ask me what I am, I'm a poet at heart. Like I'm a
Mm.
gushy hearted romantic poet at heart.
Mm.
I've got over 1,000 poems that I haven't written in a long time, but it was all romantic poetry. Um, and
Are you
I
a
thought
four on the Enneagram?
I am.
Well, the artist.
I'm the aristocratic version of the four. Yeah, damn. I've had people try to guess that before, and they've always been wrong.
Well, I'm a
You're.
four. I'm a four, so it takes one to know one.
What's weird is you're the second person in the last week who's nailed it like that. And she also said, I said, how'd you know? And it was Eva Clay. And she said, well, she said the same thing. Takes one to know one. I was like, it's very spooky. So, and what I realized was, I like the book that I'm writing right now on evolutionary relationships. Like I've been studying like what works, what doesn't work, how to set, because I'm like, my heart is so sensitive. I'm like, all right, well, that didn't work. How do I set this up right? And also, I'm sort of stupid socially because I'm an INTJ in terms of the Myers-Briggs. So I like structure and I like, but I like to play within I like to be playful. I like to, and I upset people's, so, like I don't believe in shoulds. So it's like the basic four agreements are tell the truth, adhere the truth, and truth over comfort. So I don't get blindsided mostly. Don't hold each other accountable to agreements we have not made. If you're upset, make a request for a new agreement. And four, we're each responsible for our own experience, which sometimes means making a request, sometimes means just bringing awareness to the fact that we generate our own emotions by how we're interpreting, like our triggers are our triggers. They didn't trigger us, right? Um, and so I don't even know what your question was. What was your question?
I don't know.
So my entire business has been transitioning in the last 6 months to entirely on relationships.
Yes, that's what I asked.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and part of it is, for years women have been saying you need to coach on how to be gentlemen, but still have their balls, and like actually being, and I call it being an evolutionary gentleman. Like you're still solid in your masculinity and in approval of your masculinity, but you're kind and spacious and sweet and loving, right? Um, I just never bought into the fact that because I got into this thing last night or this morning around this woman was basically like, everything that's wrong with the world is men. I'm like, or not. And I, deconstructed her interpretations about, she did this experiment walking down the street and, on sidewalks, and how many men ran into her because she didn't step aside. And I was like, I had 6 women in my last NLP course, and I told them whoever is more congruent on the sidewalk, they'll step aside. And the women all reported it was like magic that the men stepped aside, like everybody stepped aside. They're like, oh my gosh, this is magical. But you can't make it about men. She said men are inconsiderate, entitled, and like she had all the. And I said, here's the thing: you're saying that you need to deconstruct this stuff in our society, but by blaming men, the discerning and conscientious men who want to actually be on your side, you're isolating them, polarizing them against you because you are not discerning enough and you're blaming them. And so you're part of the problem. And then she made up a, so part of it is about just like those 3 stages. What I'm doing currently is those 3 stages of relationship genesis, how to set it up correctly so that you avoid the avoidable mistakes.
Sure.
Relationship continuum, which is about how to negotiate conflict, how to keep it sexy, how to put your attention on, her or vice versa. And how to deal with your own emotions in the process and how to negotiate things. And then relationship postmortem is really about how to grieve while you're honoring, well, without vilifying the other person or without going, well, men are just or women are just. I can't tell you how many guys I know, they get done with a divorce and they're like, women are blah blah blah. I'm like, no, 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 no. That woman might have been, but women aren't. You don't get to generalize to a whole gender. You don't get to generalize to a whole, like, it's just not, it's just sloppy.
That's right. Yeah.
And so how to, heal, how to, make sure you get a better partner the next time, make sure you're better the next time. And that's relationship postmortem. So those three phases are what I'm really focused on now. But I've been in an evolutionary guide. I don't really like coach, but evolutionary guide for 14 years now, full time.
It's a great title. It's a great title.
Thank you. Thank you. It's all going into sex, dating, and relationships now.
And helping men and women get along, which is a really difficult task.
Really? Totally. Which is why I think telling the truth is so important, is because you're not relating to, if you haven't said the thing you need to say or asked the thing you need to ask, you're not relating to them anymore. You're relating to the thing in your head.
Right.
And then you're not actually in connection anymore. And to me, it's all about being in connection, staying connected, staying present, staying in love.
And men have also a lot of work to do. Do you work mostly with men or women, or both?
So men and women have different challenges. Men have problems with just because all of society is telling us everything that's wrong with the world is men's fault. And also, so there's this weird thing where they're either they don't think it's okay to be a man, or they just haven't been taught how to be a gentleman, like open doors and on a first date never let her see the check, like handle that, and like simple stuff like grooming.
Honestly, I think men need to hear that they're good men, even
Right.
if they've made terrible mistakes. Maybe they've had legal issues. Maybe they've been a sex offender at one point in their lives. They've made a mistake, but then when they do their work, if they do their work, they should know that they're good men.
Hey, I know a guy who got on the sex offender list, or on the it's very low bar in California because he was peeing behind a bar. And he got on, so he was taking a piss behind a bar.
Oh, okay.
And they had just seen it too much in that neighborhood. So he got arrested for indecent exposure, and he was on that list. Like that's how, so anyway, yeah. And also just that they're not wrong for just being a man, which is really rampant in our society.
And wanting what a man wants. And yes.
Yeah. And here's the paradox. There's so many women out there going, where did all the real men go? Men who can take control, ravish me, be appropriately with permission, but oh, well, I'll tell you where they went. For 30 years, they've been told everything about being a man is wrong. Like everything that's wrong with the world is men, wars, disease, pestilence, everything, right? And so men are just punch drunk. They don't even know, they don't even they're so not right with themselves because everything they're hearing, or sitcoms where it's the hot wife and the stupid, ugly, it's there's so many messages about men are less than in our society. And then women are like, where'd all the guys go? Well, where do you think they went? They've been receiving all this hypnosis. And I just never bought into that I was, wrong for being a man, to such a degree that I often get asked if I'm from New York, even though I was born and raised in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. But also, I'm a gentleman. I'm always kind. I'm always considerate. I never do any weird, and I also never went to college, so I didn't get into the weird bro culture. I just missed all of that. And, as I said, Dad was teaching me about consent at the age of 8. So, there is something to be said for that. And there's a lot of toxic femininity out there as well. So women have different challenges. Women have problems with, drawing boundaries and speaking clearly and having clear communication and knowing how to get what they want. So they end up trying to do this shadowy, not all of them, of course, obviously. But then they're ended up frustrated why they don't get what they want when they really, if they just ask for it, a guy would probably be happy to deliver it to them. So do I work with men or women? I work with both, but they have different challenges. And then couples, of course, have different challenges. And it doesn't really matter where they're at in that cycle, like relationship genesis, relationship post, continuum, or relationship postmortem. There's an access point at each of those, whether it's a couple or somebody who's single, um, where we can transform the relationship or the relationship to relationships. Thanks for asking.
What's next?
Well, so say a little bit more about the actual process of negotiating with your current partner to seek, prostitutes and like
Well,
and other partners
other
as well.
partner. Um,
Tell us a little bit about the how. How did that go down? And tell us a little bit, like you told me before when we talked,
well,
earlier. You
it's
talked about it was really scary at first.
it's pretty organic. This is my partner is a person who came into my life 10, 11 years ago.
Mhm.
I said I don't see a future as life partners. We were involved for a
Ah,
while.
that's really
Um,
great that you were that
I was
clear.
very
That's
clear on that. I
amazing.
didn't see a life partnership, and
Well,
for some reason,
bravo for
she
telling the
she
truth that
she
boldly.
she, she kept showing up, and we continued to relate. Then stopped dating her. I had a number of other very intense relationships throughout the years, and she was always there when during those relationships or when I broke up. There was something that continued to be there with this person. Um, uh, yeah, in the last 2 years, I haven't had many other involvement. So she has been really my only or primary partner. So it's more an organic development. Okay, this is how our relationship works, and she has done also her own explorations erotically.
Sure.
Um,
Good.
uh, it's something that's developed this way, and yes, we talk about it, and I am the one who initiates a call with a poly coach and with somebody who's really good at
Yeah.
articulating. Um, uh, there's somebody I work with who's really extremely good in terms of unusual dynamics and who has a lot of
Yeah.
experience, really grounded, intuitive,
Mm.
expert. She's very quick at seeing things and being very confident about offering solutions. So yeah,
Good.
I pulled my partner in a few sessions, and that helped a lot. And
Good.
it was about uh, talking about the future and putting things in place instead of saying, okay, we'll just see what happens. Like she would say, we're fine, Max, we don't need a session. We're fine, we don't need a session. I said, no, I want to put things in place. I want to,
Yeah.
it's intentional, and it's about a decision, how things are going to look. Love is about a decision also. And
Yeah.
would you agree with that? Whether you're going to be with one person or it's a decision.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, in my experience, it's so important to put those structures in place and those agreements in place, and to ask in advance. Like handling it or cleaning it up afterwards is always, but people are scared to confront it. And sometimes, I mean, and Lord knows I've made this mistake. Like, oh, well, we're getting along so well right now. Why should we have to talk about how we'll handle a disagreement? Well, because you're going to have disagreements eventually. Um, but we don't want to quote rock. We don't want to have these, conversations that take us out of that blissful, whatever it is in the moment. But I think it's really critical to have those conversations laid down. And also, in terms of the open relating or having other partners, I think it's important to ask your partner, what is it you need to feel comfortable, with this? What do you need from me? Because
Well, some people
this
don't
needs.
know what they want, and sometimes you have
Right.
to offer. You have to say, "Listen, I'm 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 going to date somebody else, but you remain my priority." or
Right.
and you can count on me. I'm not going to
Right.
go away.
Right. Right. I think that's the major fear, right? That they're going to lose you through that. And the irony is they'll keep you if they give you that freedom most of the time, more often than not. It's the so when I was 15 years old, I think I dated this girl for about 2 weeks in high school, and she gave me some really. Her name was Debbie, and she gave me this really great insight that stuck with me for 35 years. She said, because I was really intense. I was like, huh. She said, Jason, if you women are like sand. She's also 15. Bear in mind, she said women are like sand. If you hold them really tightly, they squeeze through your fingers.
All right.
But if you just cup them and hold them, you can keep them in your hand. And that really didn't make sense to me until years later. I mean, I got the feedback then, and I thanked her for it. But I think that's true with all humans.
What was she your first?
No, we never had sex. No, I was a virgin until I was 18, or almost 18, 17 and three quarters.
A good
Yeah.
first experience?
Uh, yes, yes. I mean, not,
Nice.
the second time was much better. The first time was with the same woman. Um, I still remember her name, so that says something. We never spoke after the second time, but yeah, it was intentional. But yeah, I waited, and I mean, I didn't have sex until I was almost 18 years old.
That's pretty normal.
Well,
That's pretty
not
normal.
these days. I mean, I can't tell you how many, and not in like, I've had girlfriends from New York. They were like, no, I chose to have sex at 12. I was like, oh, and they were like, no, it was totally consensual. I was like, okay, blows my mind. I mean, I was terrified around women until like late 20s or early 30s. I was scared, terrified to approach a woman. I was lucky most of them just approached me. I was so otherwise I might have been a 30-year-old virgin. I
Yeah.
was terrified. I was like,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, it's pretty scary. Women are pretty
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah, well, there was like my two fears were speaking in front of people and then women because they're not people, they're ethereal beings, right? All right. Thank you, sir. It's been a
My
lovely hour.
pleasure. Very
Is there
much. My,
anything else you'd like to share before we go?
um, I want to say, uh, stick to your principles and your integrity, and keep the people in your life who give you happiness and energy. And don't send too many text messages because it's a hard way to communicate. Better voice messages and video messages.
You're talking to the people who are watching. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, anything that's really important to communicate should not be communicated over text. It's just ripe for misinterpretation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
Good.
Cool. Thank you so much. Thanks for
Yeah.
being here. I really appreciate it.
Good to be with you.
Good to connect. And thanks for, I look forward to more.